Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what part of the world you in, but it's getting cold. I don't know. All of a sudden, you went from this being hot to you had to find a sweater. It is Thursday, October the 17th, and we are here on the Chicken Box for another great conversation. We got some fantastic guests showing up. But before we get started, I'm Kevin Impeccable Peck, your host, along with Jay Jackson, my co-host. Jay, how are you today, sir?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm trying to stay charged up, man. I'm trying to get my energy up. Dr. Draper, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling blessed today. Glad to be here on the box one more time. You're right. It's cold in some parts of the country. It's even cold in Texas today.
Right. Our friends in South Africa probably say, "What you talking about?" They're probably wondering what you talking about. Anyway, if you've never tuned in, this is powered by the nation's third oldest black business and the DMV's first oldest black business, 132 years, powered by the AFRO American newspaper, affectionately known as AFRO News. If you've never had a chicken box and you're not from the Baltimore area, then you probably don't know what we're talking about. We talk about 4 greasy wings, comes in a nice box, salt, pepper, ketchup. It's lunchtime. I'm getting a little bit hungry right now. But if you're talking about this show, why we named it that is we want to have a platform that you could stand on and speak your truth. The thing about America is we don't like when other people speak the truth and we don't agree with them. So we all of a sudden we're mad at you because you just don't agree with my truth. But here on the Chicken Box, you can let it all hang out. Whether I agree with you or not, we're going to hear what your truth is. Today we're talking about black people versus the critical race theory. We have 2 wonderful guests coming with us. Jay, you want to do it one at a time? Let's give them their official Chicken Box welcome.
Okay.
Yes, come on.
So I think you can just bring both people on. We have 2 authors, Efua Prince and Hoke S. Glover III. They've co-written a book together called Crazy as Hell: The Best Little Guide to Black History, which is delivering, quote, a potent rebuttal to the one-dimensional narrative of African-American history defined solely by discrimination, racism, and trauma. So they're both scholars and writers. So thank you guys for being on. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Really. I think it's going to be a fun conversation. I'm very excited to talk to you. Go ahead.
I didn't want to mess her name up. Can you?
It's Efua. It's Efua.
It makes you want to say it, so you got to say it smooth when you say it. Efua. Efua. Welcome.
Efua.
Efua. All right. You're my first Efua, so just bear with me. Miss Efua, if I just met you for the very first time, what would you say about yourself?
Oh, Lord, that's a hard question. You said this was going to be easy.
I promise that. Sorry.
Okay. What would I say about myself? I like to read, I like to write, and I like my family. I'm a family person. And I think about home and family a lot. And so I write about it.
There you go. You got your cohort on Mr. Hoke. Hoke is laid back.
Oh yeah, I was just buckling up because y'all was like, "It's gonna be a chicken box." So I took it.
The grease isn't getting hot yet, Hoke. The grease is not even hot. Even if it's, you drop a little water in it, it's starting to pop a little bit. So Hoke, author and assistant professor at Bowie State University, one of our wonderful historical black colleges here in Maryland. Talk to us. Tell me how you feeling this morning.
Oh, I'm good. I mean, life at the HBCU is always interesting and exciting, but it's homecoming week here, so lots of alumni, running around, getting ready for the game tomorrow, so, you hear the marching band on the yard, which, lets you know that you're in a black house. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
Nice. Let you know you are in a black house. This is black people versus critical race theory. Dr. Draper, let's jump into it because we were talking about a title.
Well, they have a book. Yeah, but they've all
that just I know they do, but I want to hear all about it. I want to get into this wonderful book. and see how it parallels what we're talking about today.
All right, I'll jump right in. But Hope, when you talk, also let us know what you are an assistant professor of. I'd be very, very interested in that. But Hoke and Efua have a book called Crazy as Hell. I understand this book is always being updated and added to. It's a Black history book, unlike most Black history books, I think. So I'm going to let them tell us about it. Tell us about the inspiration for the book. Tell us, if you can, about your 1 or 2 favorite stories in the book. I read your book. It's an easy read. Thank you very much. It's a fairly quick read and makes you want to know more about those characters. So that's enough of me saying about it. Efua, you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about what inspired you and Hope to write this book?
Yeah, well, Crazy as Hell, thank you for asking, is we call it the best little guide to Black history because of many of the things you just mentioned. We wanted it to be accessible. We wanted it to feel familiar and yet give some new information, to be a guide to point to more information if you wanted it. What it does is we think about Black history in the way that if you're sitting around the salon or maybe in the barbershop or some comfortable place where you can speak freely, how we talk amongst ourselves about Black history. And so we think, I think there are about 100 figures in here, and we tell a brief story about each one, and we categorize them based upon the way, like the most outstanding characteristic. For example, Harriet Tubman, very familiar. We have her in the category of the runaways. And,
Right.
and so there are like outlaws, they're lawless, there are wanderers, rebels. There are different categories where we put people we may know, but we hadn't thought about quite this way.
So you're seeing the other side of the characters that maybe not be talked about in Black history class or in any history classes, huh?
Yeah, we talk about, well, people know Harriet Tubman, but nobody wants to acknowledge that if you were her friend and she had turned to you and been like, I'm going back, what would you have said to her?
You're crazy as hell.
There it is. There it is.
Okay. So that's how we're going to do all day. Okay, let's do it like that.
Yeah.
So Hope, what particular story jumps out at you that you think maybe a reader would jump into? Like, what do you say? Like, this is like the barbershop conversation?
Yeah, barbershop talk. We actually modeled the book on a book that we took over to a barbershop. It was a book called Man Law that a guy that works here at Bowie wrote. And when he went to the barber, he told me about the book, and I gave it to my son who worked at a barbershop. And within maybe like less than a week, everybody read the book because it was a very short book. But then everybody was like, yo, the Man Law says that the book had worked itself into the culture of the barbershop in a short amount of time. And I was like, that's the book I want to write. I want to write a book that's already pivoting on the way we talk and the way we act. And then when you get it, you just be like, oh yeah, crazy as hell. Like, not I gave you a lecture that lasts for 50 minutes and told you I went to Harvard and Yale and I was doing extensive research, and all that's good. That helps move Black history forward. But the other thing is that Black people are smart, whether we got educated here or not, Right. And this is a book about that intelligence. And so for me, the section I usually get on now is the Great Pretenders. So you asked what was my favorite part, but that idea, and Dr. Prince is the one that wrote that section. That's our inside joke. We wrote the book together, but we can't figure out who wrote what.
He just likes to blame me for all the parts that get a little sticky.
But I want to get sticky today. I want to figure out what's the sticky part. Come on, let's get into it.
The sticky part is, if you read the book, the Great Pretenders we trying to get out of a way we can describe, OJ, who black, not black.
Right.
He not black when he making all that money and doing whatever he's doing, and then suddenly he becomes black at the end, you know. And then Clarence Thomas, who's black, not black, you know, for whatever reason it is. But the idea that we're trying to create categories for this, because this is the way we talk about this, you know. There's the one conversation that's public, but then there's the other conversation full of black intellectualism, highly most sophisticated. Hip hop and jazz come out of this same inner space that this book comes out of. But when we talk about these things, we know enough about the history. We have our own concepts. And so, I mean, again, Dr. Draper at the beginning, you know, was talking about her grandfather could be in the book. I mean, we have, you know, again, 52 years old, you said, 10 children and starting a business. Who in America would do that now? I mean, that's crazy as hell, but that's Black history. I mean, that is the essence of the way it is that we have worked this thing. And our goal in this short book is to just give you that tiny little piece that you need to know that you like them and you're not like them.
Correct.
That you understand them. Right. So again, I understand 52 years old and 10 children, but I mean, that got to be my hero, because I can't do that. And so that's the thing, is to get close enough so that it's no longer like it's history, but really it's just like, yo, that's the dude that lived down the street, because everybody in Black history lived on somebody's street. Absolutely. And everybody on that street probably said they crazy as hell. You know, if you, and we didn't put Stokely Carmichael in the book, but I mean, again, I mean, you could go through all of Black history and realize that the Black people that are around the Black people that make Black history have a different, a very different perspective, you know. But great pretenders, I think, you know, and we can always make lists, but there are a lot of great pretenders. I mean, obviously, Clarence Thomas and O.J. Simpson aren't the only ones, you know.
Hoke, you shook the box a little bit this morning. Black, not black. Is that when people lose their black cards, or is that different?
Oh, people using their black cards? Yeah, I mean, basically,
you know, Black people take other Black people's black card away.
Yeah, or they try. Yeah,
you're not welcome in our community after you had this type of behavior.
And then I guess the other thing is white people be renting Black people's cards, right? I mean, yeah. So you know, you
temporary access, you know?
Right? Yeah. I guess i.e. Black Twitter. So is Black Twitter really Black Twitter? I mean, it's
fascinating idea for me how Black people don't run or own the business like this one, but then Black becomes attached to it, and that becomes a way that we're distributing the information, you know.
Right, you on Twitter, but you Black Twitter. But anyway, I'm gonna leave that alone. Jay, I know you jump. It's crazy as hell. People, we talking about critical race theory. We got Hoke and Efua, authors of the book. Crazy as hell. I'm gonna find it online. Is there a website so we can put up for you guys?
Yeah, no real website. I guess we just use either the Norton website, which has a description of the book, or I mean, the Amazon one is good too, you know.
All right, we'll find it before the day's over. If you just tuned in, share this with you. We're talking about CRT, critical race theory, but we're talking also about crazy as hell. Now, sometime, man, back in the day, I'm not trying to offend the ladies, but they used to say that about some women all the time. She is crazy as and,
oh, wow.
Okay, Hope.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm by myself on this one. Okay,
no, I'm not tired. I mean, maybe in you know, I wrote a poem about my mother, which I published, and you know, my mom would call the police on anybody in the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Like, my mom grew up Nashville, Jefferson Street, right down the street from Fisk, and both of her brothers were gangsters in the street. And if three dudes were sitting out talking on our block in Lanham, Maryland, in the suburbs, you know, she caught memories of maybe, you know, they was gonna be like Jefferson Street. So she called the police on them in a hot minute, you know. And so I maybe called her crazy as hell once or twice off of that, you know. Little kids teasing me, you know, like, what's up with your mama? Why she keep calling the police on us, you know? So I get it. I'm trying to heat up the grease, man. You know,
somewhat hot. Look, I was going to ask Dr. Prince. I don't know if you have the book pulled up or have it handy. if there's an excerpt. Good, there it is, both of you. Dr. Prince, can you or either and I don't know, Hoke, if you're a doctor or not. So if
I am not.
Okay, but I'm gonna make you a doctor. So either one of you, can you just read one of the short excerpts from? Can you find something that and just share it with us?
Well, I mentioned The Runaway. I can read that.
Okay, you want to read The Runaway?
So again, it comes in categories, and so I'm like, how do I? And each section starts with like one of these black pages, and I'll just read the black page where about.
I like the one about black folks who jumped off the boat. But anyway, go ahead and read the one.
Oh, that's the Mystic Negro.
Go ahead and read The Runaway. Go ahead and read that one.
Okay, runaways are tricky. We all want to run away from something, but some of us follow through with it. Some of us don't. But all of us have dreamed of turning tail and cutting out. For enslaved African Americans, running was a natural response to the problem of slavery. Why do you think we're so good at track and field? Regardless of how common the impulse was to run, most people didn't. Living in the 21st century might make it difficult for us to understand just how crazy enslaved folks had to be to run away. But for one reason or another, these runaways can't stay. And for us, their running harnesses the power of flight. And each of the categories has a public service announcement. So here's the public service announcement for the runaways. Running is a type of change. Change is hard for most people to accept. Most won't run away. They'll work that job they hate forever and drink more Crown Royal and cheat on their partner before they think about running to get freedom.
Crazy as hell. Anyway, welcome to the Chicken Box. If you just tuned in, we have Efua and Hoke, co-authors of the book Crazy as Hell. She just read an excerpt. That was the PSA was powerful. A powerful statement of authority. That's what I'm gonna call it. The new PSA, baby. You doing something that you hate doing. That you had to be crazy as hell then, right? That's insanity 101. You getting up every day doing the same thing and drowning it in crown and cheating. That's a lot of pressure.
Drowning it in crown. I like that. Yeah.
Jay Jackson.
I'm a poet by trade, so that's a heavy poetic.
Listen, right anything on the Chicken Box, man, you could just jump on it. You know, the purple bag was the best thing about Crown for me as a child. I wanted that purple bag so I could hold some stuff in. I wasn't drinking no Crown early, but I knew people who were. Jay Jackson.
So I have a couple of questions, but you answered a number of them already. So one thing I'll say is a lot of Black folks have this, you sort of hear a familiar refrain, which is that media is one of the reasons why people have such a myopic view of Blackness, right? Like there's always sort of slave films or something like that, or what some people refer to as like trauma films, right? My question is, do you agree with that? And, you know, this idea of like, have you seen things changing, right? Because these stories that you're talking about, at least in that blurb, you mentioned one of the people you mentioned, I don't think a lot of people know who that is Stagger Lee, right? Like who became this sort of folk hero. And for folks who don't know, if you've seen the movie American Fiction just recently, Jeffrey Wright's character uses Stag R. Lee as his pseudonym to pretend to be like this hood dude writing this book, right? And so my question is, with movies like that and sort of things that are showing Black people in much different lights, I think, in media, do you think that things are getting better? Do you think we're trying to move away from this sort of myopic view? Or are things largely the same in your eyes? Or has it moved enough?
You want
to either one of you, but both of you.
Go ahead, Hoke.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that question of how much better things are getting, and you know, every time we get a chance to talk to people, I mean, this book comes out of I think just sort of a different place. You know, America's got this sophisticated idea about what Black progress is, but Black history and culture in America is cyclical. You know, like, you know, the more sophisticated scholars or folks that mess with quantum physics and all of that, I mean, this idea, the linear world or the stabilized idea of progress, that it travels on this trajectory that moves from one point to another, It's just, I mean, it's pretty much dissolving. But the way I look at Black history, if you begin with a period like slavery, and then you move to, say, you know, World War I, and you get to the Harlem Renaissance, and then you get to the 1950s, Cold War period, then you have Black Power. I look at it as almost these sort of alternating forces where things sort of go back and forth, you know, that every idea of progress that you can pose for African Americans seems to duplicate itself, or I mean repeat itself at a certain time. So we have a civil rights movement, and then we move to George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and Black folks have attempted to articulate how the same, and I was about to curse, but the same stuff keeps happening again and again. And so that idea of progress, I think, in some ways is what is it? An advantage, or tactically it works for some people in society. But then on another hand, I mean, again, when you get to George Floyd, I mean, is George Floyd Emmett Till? You know, or what are the similarities in that situation? So that idea of whether things are getting better is, I'm not so sure about that question. And maybe Dr. Prince feels a little bit different. I think the next level for people that study Black history is to understand it as a series of patterns. Like once you know the history, then you start to intuit that there are patterns there as compared to linear progress. And that's when we change our approach to this, you know. And again, you know, it's not mentioned, but I spent a lot of time studying China, and I'm a Taiji practitioner, and I study the I Ching. And so part of the reason this book can be written is because we're not on that linear progress thing. Like now we're saying these are the patterns, these are the archetypes of Black history. So I mean, that fundamental archetype is the runaway. But then you have wanderers, you have lawless, you have outlaws. Those archetypes exist in all of the stages of Black history. We're disrupting the idea of linear progress in Black history by creating archetypes that say, no matter where you were in Black history, your response to the way this thing works fits into these very specific categories. It's a heavy scientific concept, but we didn't write a heavy scientific book. We wrote a book you read at the barbershop, you know?
No, but look, I think it's a great answer, right? Like this, like, yeah, conversation in the barbershop can be, you know, a lot more sort of flat, and, you know, you can have those conversations or whatever, but what you're pointing at, this idea of it being cyclical, I think is the kind of stuff that people do want to dig into, right? Like I like the idea that it is not just you start at one point and then everybody, and then suddenly you get to like kumbaya at the end, right? Like yeah, because it's not, that is actually not what reality is. But to your point, this idea of there are these sort of categories and we're always in them, right? I love that answer. I think that's dope. That's really dope.
And I think that reaffirms why the Black press is so important. And speaking of the Black press, let me say to those who are watching by Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, welcome. This is the Chicken Box, powered by the AFRO. 132 years of, you know, some cyclical things ourselves. But the Black press is a trusted source that tells the truth. And so you just can't listen and watch and go to and read the same old things all the time, because you will miss who we really are. And there's always been, speaking of cycles, there's always been an attempt to erase the Black press.
Yes.
Hey, could we read Ida B. Wells Barnett then?
Yep.
We're talking about the Black press.
You go ahead. You sure?
You have to be crazy to be a journalist committed to reporting on lynching with any honesty back when they was regularly stringing Black folks up. It was a dangerous job. Folks talk about freedom of the press, but lynchers murder. They were killing Black folks for less. It's crazy as hell to think somebody going to give you freedom of speech when they won't even let your body be free. Ida B. Wells Barnett gets the craziest hell award for working towards freedom of speech when there was clearly no freedom of speech. Think about it. Lynchings are state-sanctioned mob violence promoted with as much celebration within the white community as parades on the 4th of July. When white people reported on lynchings, they wrote things like this quotation from the Monticello News following the murder of the Barber family in 1950. It is needless to say that no one knew from whence the mob came and whither it went after the lynching was over. When Ida B. Wells Barnett reported on lynching, she wrote things like, "A Winchester rifle should have a place of honor in every Black home, and it should be used for that protection which the law refuses to give." Even after they burned down her print shop and ran her out of town, she just kept writing about lynchings, drawing a link between racial oppression and exploitation and white economic opportunity. That's a wee bit crazy. Even crazier than that is the fact that she was posthumously awarded a Pulitzer Prize for journalism in 2020, the year of the COVID-19 pandemic and the global Black Lives Matter protests sparked by the murder of George Floyd.
Absolutely. And when the AFRO wrote about lynching, we wrote about it. We wrote a lot about lynching too in Maryland, especially Maryland's Eastern Shore. We talked about who the person was. We sat down at the mother's kitchen table. We dug deep into the character of the person who was, you know, unfortunately killed by lynching. And so there is a difference. Thank you for sharing that about Ida Barnett Wells. You know, we hold her up, right? We lift her up, but there are a lot of other Black press that were doing the same things. And some of whom also got their places burned, or got, like the AFRO, we had the FBI investigate us as communists, but tell us about what was going on. So these things are important. So thank you both, Dr. Prince. Thank you, Dr. B. Hoke, Glover. Thank you all for the work that you're doing around this. And to those who are watching, Brian Deese, we sure saw you. Brian is usually watching the Chicken Box every week. We saw your heart. We want to say to those who are watching, put your questions in the chat. Let us know who you are. I know some people are watching now. Some will watch it in the recorded format. But this is the Chicken Box, where you speak your truth. Impeccable. You look like you have something just bubbling up there.
Well, I like the fact that somebody's reading us a story. You know what I mean? I'm sitting back because you don't really get that much. First of all, everybody's reading something in the news, bite a video, or laughing at somebody falling down, doing something, farting, doing something crazy with cats or whatever. What? It's a bunch of fart videos on it. If y'all haven't seen it, if you need to laugh every now and then, sometimes you need to just laugh. What was the PSA on that story that you just read? Hope.
And the PSAs are for categories. So okay. Let me go back here. I'm sorry.
You're a man after my own heart. If I lose these, boy, I don't know what happened. One time I couldn't stretch the book no further. Hope I just
mine are all broken up. But her section, she was actually in the badass category. And so the public service announcement, this is the one that actually started the whole book. So the public service announcement for the badass category is: be careful about being bold. Given the dangerous nature of racism and the evil that sets the stage for much of Black history, we have to stress that there is a difference between badass and stupid. It's like the folks on TV who jump over cars and do stunts. If you have not studied with the right bold Black person, please do not scream at white folks, brandish weapons, backtalk your boss, or do some stupid shit that will get you fired, locked up, or killed. These badass Black people are masters of their craft, legitimate Black history heroes who hone their skills through dangerous encounters. Show some respect. If you don't know what you were doing, leave this one alone.
Crazy as hell. We talking about the book. We have the authors here live on the Chicken Box: Jewel, Craig, Byron, Latoria. Anybody else too? Just put in the chat where you're listening from. Go get the book. It's on Amazon right now. Crazy. Hold up the book one time. We're promoting the hell out of this book. Crazy as hell. I think I ain't said hell that much in my life. Boy, the Lord is coming to get us. Anyway, hey, I love it because it has now stirred you up. So you're gonna see yourself in this book somewhere, huh? You're gonna see your personality, and you're gonna be able to all of a sudden say, okay, that's a runaway behavior. Maybe they could change the behavior, right? But at the moment, they could have runaway behaviors, and if they don't change them, the doom is gonna, It sounds like the Crown will get him. I don't know why the Crown is.
Maybe Impeccable, but then you have Harriet Tubman. You know, she's in that category. She's the poster person almost for that category. So you need the Harriet Tubmans.
Well, that's why it's not linear. I guess what Hoke was saying, right? It was like, we're thinking that it's only this, but when you put it to a person who continually goes to the place that they hate the most every day and continues to do something that is very uncomfortable. Harriet Tubman wasn't that person, because she was doing something that she was led and called to do. Because look, I don't even want to. It's a pastor in Baltimore that walks to DC once a month from the Empowerment Temple. I can't think of his name right now, but he walks for reparations once a month. I don't even want to walk to the store. So Harriet, if she was whatever the underground, as a child, did you ever want to think that the railroad was like an actual railroad?
Yeah, I remember that thought. I was like, what is this thing?
What is
like, they keep talking about this railroad? Like, where's it at? Like, how did the railroad get underground? I remember trying to soak up that metaphor as a kid, and yeah, I mean, magical black folks, right? I mean, working the language in a really, really sophisticated way, you know, that sparks imagination, you know, for a child. I remember that, looking for it, trying to figure out.
Does anybody know the history of the statement of Underground Railroad?
Well, I know Colson Whitehead has a book called The Underground Railroad, where in the book, he is set back in the past, but the railroad is actually, he makes it literal because he had that same thought. He said when he was a kid, he thought the railroad was underground. So he writes it that way. But I think it has to do with the idea that, you know, people like Harriet Tubman. Of course, she's the most famous, but she was not the only one. But they were conducting, you know, they were conducting people from one place to another. And so the idea of the railroad got drawn based on that notion that people were conducting people, taking them from one place to the next.
What person do you resonate with most in the book? Or personality or PSA?
Well, it's got to be either the intellectuals or the wanderers, and I don't think any of us has to be like fixed in one category or one box. It's like today I might be wandering, or tomorrow I might be, you know, running. It might be, or today I might feel like a badass, or tomorrow I might be an outlaw. I don't think we're fixed. And part of it is just like when you look at these people in history, or some of them are not, some of them are still alive, and some of them are characters rather than actual historical figures. What you're looking at, what we wanted people to see is that these are people, you know, and it could be yourself, and that they were human. When I go to DC and I look at that monument they made and King standing there with his arms folded, and you got to look like all the way up to even see him, but he's in the book because he's crazy as hell. He's not a monument, he's a man, he's a person, just like me or you. And what history sometimes does is make us static, make it seem impossible. And if we have kids, and I hope they're not too young reading the book because we got a little language in there, but if we got kids, and we do want young people like high schoolers and college age students, if like my students, if my students are reading the book, what I'm hoping they take away is this could be you, or it could be your brother, your sister, your father, your mother. It could be your uncle, your aunt. It's somebody. My mother used to tell me when I was a kid, every time I picked up a book, she's like, somebody wrote that. Somebody wrote that. So what she was doing was demystifying the book. It didn't seem far. And that's what we're trying to do in this book. It's like, these people ain't far from you. They're not far. You know them.
All right, let's jump into this. Thank you, Rashida, for your question. In trying to illustrate the experience of Black people, how often do you find yourself delving into the pathology of the white mind and culture? Does it intimidate you to do so? 2 questions. How often do you find yourself delving into the pathology of the white mind and culture?
Yeah, I don't think we spend a lot of time thinking about them in that way.
Hallelujah. That's the problem, right? You always worried about that type of thinking. It could get you off track. You know, is the ice really colder syndrome, I think.
And they got a section in the book, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, like, I think that's revolutionary, which is a Black history book, but then white people got a section. Because if you don't put them in a section, then what happens is they seem to be this dominating presence that exists all throughout Black history and far more definitive than they are. I mean, we should do that in every Black history book going forward. This is a section for the white people because we don't want you to think that all of Black history is pivoting on what they do and what they think.
Right.
You know, so this is a section about the white people in the book. You can have it at the beginning or the end or wherever it is you want. And then again, give them a public service announcement because we want you to focus on what the Black people was doing. Yeah, that's what this book is about. This book is about Black people. So let's contain even the way we think about white people in relationship to Black history. And that's got to be done because they are not God. They are not phenomena. They're not nature, not the sun, none of that. But you can read certain books on Black history and you might begin to think that the most sophisticated thing Black people have done is navigate their relationship with white people. That's crazy as hell. It's absolutely ridiculous. Our contribution to history is not navigating a relationship with some white people.
I like the idea of not defining Blackness in the light of white people. That's like I think that's a good point. Can you? I'm sorry, Efua, I just wanted to just, touch on this real fast.
Mm-hmm.
The chapter you have about white people. What is the? Can you give kind of a summary of how you guys sort of put them in whatever this particular box is? How do you define that? Like, what is their place? Just like,
gotta buy a book for that, Jay. We're not talking about them on the day show.
I'm just curious as to what is the method by which you sort of put them in this. You define them so that you can move on, because I do think a lot of Black history in the eyes of a lot of people is like white people are this sort of overarching thing, and then you guys, you know, sort of live under that sort of that weird light, which, you know, I think does keep people with a very myopic view of Blackness.
Well, I mean, I think the thing I was about to say actually answers in part your question, which is when I went to the Smithsonian years ago and they were having an exhibition called Field to Factory. And then when you walk into this room, one of the things you see first, way hanging up high, you know, it's like the thing that catches your eye is a Klan's robe. And I'm like, why is that in this section? And no Black person ever wear one of them. Right. Why is it in the Black section? And so when we think about the way the white category comes into this book is kind of like that. We're not thinking about them as some terrorizing force within the Black community. We're thinking about them from the standpoint where we look at the way that because this is from our standpoint, this is us talking to amongst ourselves. And it's not that white people can't read the book. Many white people love the book. Many people have bought it, had us signing it, they like the book. But the point was not, they're not the primary audience, nor are they, like Hoke just said, a dominating force. Instead, when we're talking about white people, it's like, how do you talk about white people? So we got Becky in there because Hoke need to know who Becky is. Right. They need to know who the man is. Who is that guy? And so it's like the way we talk amongst ourselves.
Okay.
Right, because this generation might not know who the man is. But
they
back
when
we were growing up, the man was definitely the popo. For sure. If you just
missed that one. I mean, it's always the book can evolve, but yeah, we missed the popo.
Second edition.
Oh gosh, we should have had the popo in there. Dang.
You can fix
I'm a little upset. We missed the popo.
Put the popo in the digital edition. If you just tuned in, we're getting into it. We're talking about critical race theory, basically, but the crazy as hell book with the great authors, Efua and Hoke, on with us to give us some. And if you missed it, they read. We don't want them to read the whole book. We want you guys to buy the book and try reading yourself. Maybe are you guys gonna put it on audio format as well?
Yeah, we've been working on that. We should talk about. Can you talk about
get some of your kids, man, as a project? Get your kids as a project down there at Bowie State. Go down there and just do the audio. You can have different kids read different chapters. You'll be finished it in a minute.
Or you can get AI to read it. But there are 100 stories in there. What I love is that it's giving people a glimpse of how we talk. It's just like with Kamala Harris's candidacy. White folk ain't know nothing about the Divine Nine.
No.
Those were things we talked about. You say it on Bowie's campus. Everybody knows who you're talking about, whether they're a part of it or not. So we have certain code, if you will.
Yeah, code. It's all about code.
And so you're giving people a glimpse into what some of that code is, and even your part about white people. We got some white people that are what we call abolitionists, in our language of abolitionists, not their language of abolitionists. So that's pretty cool, giving people a glimpse. And then we're not all monolithic either. We don't all fall into one category. We span all these different categories. So that's pretty cool. So
let's get into the critical race theory. Let's even define that, because we said this was the critical race theory, and I like how you said about when you went to the museum. That was a perfect example of well, let me read the definition, because people have heard critical race theory, but we got to educate just for a second. Dictionary.com says it's a conceptual framework that considers the impact of historical laws and social structures on the present day is that I don't know. I can't even read the word. Perpetuation of racial inequality. Man, I need my glasses fixed. First used in legal analysis and now applied in education, communication studies, and sociology. So do you guys want to add to the critical race theory?
Well, I can say that most of us are not teaching critical race theory, because it is mostly like graduate students and legal students, and people turned it into a buzzword to try to forward a political agenda. I teach African American studies, and I rarely am teaching critical race theory. So, I think
that's it for that. Let's keep moving.
Yeah, I treat discussions on critical race theory like I need to see how much gas is in the room. I'm always careful what I'm going to say about critical race theory. I mean, I think it's complicated if you got an essay on it or a long time to talk about it. But again, the way it gets played out in the society is always, again, that buzzword makes it something different. I think the internal approach on critical race theory for Black people in our community, I mean, I'd be interested in discussing that. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I know Reginald Dwayne Betts, who has a Yale Law School degree, who is the whole reason that this book exists, which is another story. But when we first talked about critical race theory, I mean, he was literally like, I don't know what it means either. I mean, we've had a sophisticated discussion over 20 years. He's one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And again, Yale Law School degree, but 8 years in prison. And we have never made reference to critical race theory in our internal conversation. And he is a highly sophisticated individual, very much concerned about Black people and our future. But that's just not one of the terms that we use, So, I mean, I put that out there. But other folks feel different. I mean,
well, they're saying that.
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, they're saying that it's woven into it, so it's like it's invisible to society. It's like, okay, we're not talking about it, but this race theory of based on how the laws and the Constitution and some of the other things were written leaning towards not us at all, which I guess we can approach it from that angle. Dr. Francis.
Obvious and true.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, that's yes. Just because we're not talking about it doesn't mean the thing that critical race theory addresses doesn't exist.
Right. It's just that it's meant not to be in your face. It's like redlining until you figure it out, and then it's like, wait a minute. Y'all doing that, what I mean? It's like once you figure out what they're doing, then it's like, okay, you are doing this based on a racial bias in these particular areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea that the legal system is set up unevenly for Black people has been true since forever, right? Like,
Yeah.
To Dr. Prince's point, it was CRT has been used now as this idea of let's just keep saying this buzzword like woke until, you know, whoever, conservatives or whatever, lose their minds and then go to the polls to vote against Black people's interests. That's all it is, right? I think, you know, your book has so much more to do with taking Black people's history and pulling it out of this paradigm of slavery and, you know, unnecessarily unjust, you know, legal system and things like that, and giving Black people being able to see all of Blackness, right? Whether that is like, you know, like your categories, right? Whether that's the badass or the inmate and everything else. And sometimes you only get half of one or part of one, and that's what, you know, gets hyper concentrated on. But like, I like the idea that you're focusing on that Black people are full human beings, which is a thing that we are often not shown. We're often shown as stereotypes. But in this book, you're not dealing with stereotypes as much as you're dealing with archetypes. And in every group of people, there's the badass, there's the spiritual person, there's the runaway. That all of those people exist, or all those archetypes exist across all races. But for some reason, when Black people are talked about, we fit into a box about this big, right? And it's like, you all do this and it's all the same and everybody moves in the same direction. But I think this idea of knocking down Black people are not a monolith, people say that, but then they end up reinforcing it anyway. And I appreciate that your book is not just saying it, but really giving you these sort of vignettes into history and saying, no, it's not just talk. Like, you can go look at the history that we are a full people. And I think a lot of that's missed. I really do. So, yeah, CRT is a wonderful thing from a legal perspective, but for the most part, it's just used as a weapon against us. Like, that's all it is.
Exactly.
That's what I was going to say. It's an academic concept that most people can't even explain, even the academicians.
Exactly.
Right.
And I'm amongst them every day.
Right. Let alone the people who, you know, they hate it. You ask them what it means, and they're like,
no.
I feel sad. That's it.
Are you at Bowie as well, Dr. Prince?
I'm at Wayne State University.
Wayne State, okay. And what do you teach, Hoke, at Bowie?
Oh yeah, I'm an English guy, so okay. we're language, literature, and cultural studies now.
Okay.
But yeah, but this same department I graduated from, so I'm an alum of Bowie. I came out in '94. Yep. So that's I came back to my home. Yeah,
that's great.
One of my homes. Yeah.
So let me ask both of you this: do you anticipate that your book is going to be banned?
People keep asking us about
that. Yeah, we keep getting it banned.
I hope it gets banned.
Yeah, that's
sell better.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a.
We can always put it on the Underground Railroad.
But you know, always, and Mark Lamont Hill asked us about banned books, and I used to own Black bookstores, so I own Caribou Books, and we sold your paper, at all of our locations,
Thank you.
And the truth is that, the way that banned books get framed, like it's and I'm gonna use this term, it's schizophrenic that we imagine that, again, the press is free for Black folks. Like, how can you talk about racism and then say the press is free? I mean, like, how does race affect the press? Which is Dr. Draper, where you began, and it's the same thing with publishing. So, like, this idea of a banned book, white folks can ban your book simply by not publishing it. Every Black writer I know has problems getting published. So this idea of banned books are only the books that make it into print and then get banned, when Black people struggling with racism are trying to upload, and nobody ever calls it censorship. You say somebody's racist, but then they never censored you? Like, I mean, it's like the way American discourse is managed, Black people be accommodating themselves to this. Because if I was Black, and I'm saying, if I was Black, the only way that I would ever discuss any of that stuff is censorship. I'd be like, you banned half the literature. How many books Black folks written that ain't been published by white folks? And then you got me running around here talking about a book that got banned? after it got published, when every black writer I know got 20 books in their cachet, they can't get published. Is that a banned book? So the only reason this book gets published is because of Reginald Dwayne Betts, who among Yale, I mean, he went to Yale, but he also went to prison. And so Dwayne in prison developed this different type of consciousness. And then he's a MacArthur Fellow. And so he was able to take a book that might be unpublished and pitch it to his publisher, one of the best publishers in the country. But I think that's the real question about banned books. I mean, so this could have been a banned book were it not for Dwayne Betts. It just would have been a banned book that we call or designate as unpublished. Hard book to publish. Yep.
So that just begs the question. How many Black-owned book publishing companies, do you all have any idea about that number? Are there, it sounds like there are not many. And that sounds like that may be a good business to go into.
Well, you know, I was a Black bookseller for 15 years.
Okay.
And so Africa World Press and the Red Sea Press, Haki Madabuti's Third World Press, and Black Classic Press owned by Ta-Nehisi. Well, the father of Ta-Nehisi, Paul Coates.
Mm-hmm.
But those are pretty much the major Black presses that have a history or legacy, and nobody's 132 years. Like nobody's like you. But those are the ones that have been around in the 30 to 40, 30 to 50 range. There are lots of small presses, but those are the only ones that maybe even have lists that are over, say, 100 to 200 books.
Right. And the AFRO used to publish books. We published Nick Aaron's.
Really?
Yeah, we published the 50 best essays of Black authors in 1950. It's a hardback book. We still have a couple of copies of those. We published a book called This Is Our War. We had the largest contingency of Black war correspondents in World War II, and they wrote their stories, and it's in a book. In fact, Paul Coates just republished that book, which came out in 1945, I think 1945. So we have several books that we published at one time.
Oh, wow. I mean, I think there is space for, a Black publisher, but just got to be really well capitalized. I mean, that market is just so competitive.
It's a different time too, because with digital books, audio books,
yeah.
I mean, how people prefer to read. Is it in print? Is it, what format are they reading it in? But probably I'd say to say a good book will never go away, right? Will never really truly go away. We are running out of time. We need a part 2. Because crazy as hell, we only talked about a couple things, but then we connected the dots. And the overall theme that I hear is that most of the slavery or the bondage that we're in is in our mind.
And I was going to say this. I mean, I think, the real issue of slavery, or part of what we're trying to do in the book, is that it's sanity or insanity. Like it's another way of reading slavery. The core of this thing is, are you insane for wanting to be free? And you live in a culture that has the ability to suggest, and to suggest that you are insane for wanting to be free. And so what Black people have done to survive is manage, like, again, no matter what the society says, that capacity to manage what sanity for us is at the core of our history. So that really syncs up with where we're at now when people talk about mental health issues, right? I mean, a mental health issue is being a slave and wanting to be free. So, I mean, if we say it again.
In addition to that, a mental health issue is for somebody looking at a person and saying you're a piece of property.
Right. That's a mental issue.
That's a mental health issue too.
We're gonna need a part 2 on this, y'all. We're gonna need. This is the beautiful book, Crazy as Hell, with the authors who've taken it another direction. This has been the Chicken Box, powered by the AFRO. Listen, go to afro.com, and for less than 2 Uber Eats, you can have a digital subscription. You think things happen for free? They don't. You don't stay around for 132 years. We need your support. And we're going to tell your story like no other. Go to afro.com. We've had the domain name before USA Today had theirs. we are first in almost every category all the time, and we have to continue to be that, but we can only do that with your support. But thank you for those who have already subscribed. And if the money's tight, you can like us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, like us on all the socials. That costs you nothing but a few seconds. Little thumb action. So we're going to go around the horn real quick, and we're going to let you get on the box and say your final words, because I'd love to continue this conversation forever. And we got to come back to story reading. We might have to start that, Dr. Draper and Jay Jackson, just pulling out some books and just have some wonderful kids read and some other people just come read live on air. I think it was wonderful. I hope you guys who were listening agreed that just having a short story read was something different. And if you could just sit back and get into the pages in the words of the story, you can find yourself in a place that just takes you somewhere different. So you know what? That's going to be me. I'm going to box first. Thank you for coming. Forget critical race theory. Let's get the small press but the big mind theory. Because us as African Americans, we can create. You can't hold us down. You can't. I almost said Hoke like roaches. You can't get rid of us, but I didn't. That don't sound too good. But we're not going nowhere. Matter of fact, we are the foundation and the thread of life through this world, and we have a place, and we don't ever have to apologize for being Black and trying to live up. And thank you, Rashida, for your question. We never have to apologize for how God made us, and we should be the greatest people that God made us to be. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Jay Jackson, you on the box.
Okay. Well, thank you to our guests for coming in, Dr. Efua Prince and Hoke Glover III. Thank you very much. It was a great conversation. What I would say is books like Crazy as Hell do something that I think is deeply important, which is showing the full tapestry of our experiences and our history as people. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't even know that about their own history. So I like that the audience is Black folks. And if somebody else wants to read it and they enjoy it, great. But you're shooting straight down the alley towards educating Black people about their own history and the things that they may not know, and being able to see themselves in these figures in Black history. And I think that's really dope. So I appreciate the work. I'm actually really excited to read your book. So I'm going to order it today, honestly.
Crazy as hell. Crazy as hell. Order it now.
Hey, let us know what you think, man. Reach out.
I will reach out. Absolutely. Okay. Don't ignore my emails. Don't throw it.
I'm gonna save the ladies for last. Hoke, you're on the box. Final words about today's show, or Crazy as Hell. Anything else you want to share at the moment?
No, I just say thanks to you guys for doing what you do, and been an opportunity for me to learn another Crazy as Hell story. Honored to meet and engage you, Dr. Draper, and you, Impeccable, and Jay, and yeah, we're just really thankful for you guys, doing what you've always done with a book like this. So thank you.
Keep educating our children over there at Bowie State. We appreciate you, and at Wayne State, Dr. Draper.
And so I'm going to do what you suggested, Impeccable. Thank you, Dr. Prince. Thank you, Assistant Professor Glover. I'm going to read something as my last thing on the box and from the book. And so it's called Crownsville Hospital for the Negro Insane. And it says the mental hospital located in the town of Maryland with the same name is the inspiration for this book. What book? Crazy as Hell. Crownsville, built by African-American patients with mental illnesses, operated from 1910 to 2004. During that time, patients cleaned tens of thousands of pieces of laundry like they were still enslaved. They were also subjected to lobotomies, wretched surgeries where doctors cut out a part of the brain in an attempt to cure mental illness. The problem is that Black folks may be called crazy and getting locked up because they are free thinkers. Not everybody is cut out for following rules that were, after all, often designed for the benefit of other people. Some people may find ways to internalize this conflict. Others might internalize it. It sounds crazy as hell, but the real problem with slavery is that we wanted to be free no matter what happened. Think about it. If America could have afforded it, they would have cut out the part of the brain that made African Americans want to be free. While we still tell jokes about folks being crazy as hell, some of us really struggle with mental illness. Bipolar disorder and schizophrenia are common diagnoses that stand out because these two forms of mental illness suggest that the mind is somehow divided into two selves, which sounds a lot like the famous idea of double consciousness coined by one of America's most famous intellectuals, W.E. Du Bois, in his classic, The Souls of Black Folk. Thank you all again for being on. That's just a little excerpt. And to those who are listening and watching today, now you've heard 4 excerpts. You got to go read the other 96 in support of these authors.
Dr. Prince, you are now on the box. Final words. We're going to close out the show with you.
Well, thank you, everyone.
You can say whatever you want.
Well, you know, reading that section right there, I had some other things I was going to say, but I do want to say thank you first for just giving us this opportunity to discuss this. But that issue of mental health is so vital. I was on a public transportation yesterday, and a man who clearly he had a bracelet on, something was going on, and he was belligerent and was abrasive to other passengers. And one young man decided he had to physically fight him. A fight broke out, and then when he pushed him off the tram, and then the man's glasses fell in, and he stomped on the glasses. And I guess I was making sounds because it was not pleasing to me to see how this was going down. And he felt justified. He came and he expressed to me that he had to do this because the man was out of control, but he had a mental health issue. And if anything, I hope this book helps us to find ways to view people with more compassion and to understand that some of our differences may not be understood, but that we can find more loving and caring ways to engage one another.
Amen. Amen. Speaking of engaging one another, call a senior. They'd love to hear from you. You know, that auntie, that grandmama, that granddaddy, that uncle that you don't ever talk to, except at Christmas, or you might not even talk to them then because they live in another state. They'd love to hear from you. Give them a call and just tell them that you love them, because you never know when the day is that particular day. Thank you for tuning in to the Chicken Box, powered by the Afro American newspaper. You know, we love the Black people, you know, where you come to get the good news and also the history. So now you guys are officially in the Afro archives. When they look up Crazy as Hell, back when our children's children look it up, there will be, not in the book, but will be in the video format. So until next time, keep doing what you do. I would say go Bowie, but I'm a Morgan grad, so I'm just going to say, I'm not playing Morgan, I'll say go Bowie.
All right.
Guys, everybody have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. All right, love y'all. All right, peace.